Last time on the Volvo Ocean Race, we saw the build-up, the teams and the preparation that goes into this, the most demanding yacht race in the world. Formerly known as the Whitbread Round the World Race, this is no ordinary sailing event. Over the next 9 months, these professional sailors will be racing around the world in potentially deadly conditions, battling the worst nature can throw at them. They've been planning for every eventuality, from the worst-case scenario, man overboard.
I think in my situation, you sort of feel like you didn't have too many more minutes left of sort of paddling away.
To the second worst scenario, high seas cuisine.
Wrist deck. Can't stir like this, doesn't work. You gotta hack at it.
But now this grueling 32,000-mile adventurous challenge is drawing ever nearer.
In ocean racing, the difference between good teamwork and poor teamwork, quite literally, can make the difference between life and death.
Can you imagine giving your life to somebody else? And you tell somebody else, well, do with it whatever you see fit.
To like a person and have respect for a person is not necessarily the same thing. And we can still go on racing together, competitive race, and high performance around the world. But we don't have to like each other.
After what has been years of planning, the moment of truth drew ever closer as the 8 teams prepared to leave Southampton on the morning of September the 23rd, 2001.
We have been preparing for this for 2 years, and today is the D-Day, and we want to go. It's a bit nervous, a bit tensed, anxious to get away, get on with the racing, and yeah, we want to go.
Very exciting and very nervous. You know, it's two and a half years work for me, up to 18 months work for the crew, and they put all their lives into this.
It's quite exciting. It's the first time the whole crew's on the boat, sort of saying, cheerio, we're off to the next port. And it's great having everyone here to see us off, and there's lots of adrenaline going, I think.
With only hours to go before the start, the crews make their final equipment checks, load the sails, and put the last of the provisions on board. Their next stop will be over 7,000 miles away in Cape Town, South Africa. There remains only one job left, saying goodbye.
We'll be fine. It's just us that we have to worry about, you know. I would be much happier if the first leg was maybe 10 days or 2 weeks, but 30 days is a long time not to have any communication, for sure.
For some, the farewells are even more poignant. Jerry Mitchell from Tycho is recently married and will now be apart from his new wife, Michelle, less than a month after their wedding. Another married couple are in a slightly different situation. Neil and Lisa MacDonald are race rivals.
I think most people from the outside see it as an unusual thing for a husband and wife to be doing a race like this, but to us it's not. It's what we both do as a profession, and the fact we're both doing the race is a bonus for us.
But all too soon it was time for the action to start, and to an emotive send-off, the crews motor out of Southampton's ocean village into the Solent. Veteran skipper Roy Heiner on Assa Abloy knows the value of teamwork in these events and tries to pull his team together with a final motivational pep talk.
Let's not beat around the bush too much. We have a team here that has had their problems. We've told each other that we are idiots. We have told each other that we are crazy. We've told each other that we are good. lot has happened between us as a group. It hasn't been one of the easiest 4 months that there is. I've come from campaigns where everybody was the best of friends, and those campaigns never won. There are 12 egos on this boat. That's fantastic, because I think all top sporters have egos. That's the only way you're the best. But I'd like you all to come a little bit closer here to this compass. Come around Magnus, everybody. And put your fist down on the compass.
Don't break it.
I'm sure you can fit in there.
Yes. Yes.
And gentlemen, we do this because we want to win as a group. We also do this because there are 8 shore crew out there that have helped us to win. There are 50 boat builders out there that have made us win. And all the wives that are out there, that's one big team. And for all those people, we're going to do this. And we're going to win this race. Right. Go for it.
Well said, Roy. Yes. Go.
It's going to be a spinnaker start, we think. The breeze is up and down a little. There's some clouds coming over from the north, which have been changing the breeze quite a lot. But, I think it'll be quite exciting, to say the least. A bit of jockeying for position. I guess we'll just have to see how it all goes. I'm glad Roy's doing it, not me, that's for sure.
So with the tension mounting as the final countdown approaches, the skippers must manoeuvre their boats into the best possible position to cross the line first, for what promises to be the dramatic beginning of the 2001-2002 Volvo Ocean Race. With under an hour before the start of the race, the skippers must now struggle through the thousands of spectator boats and support craft towards the starting box. It seems as though the whole of southern England has turned up to wave them off. So many boats in such a confined space churn up the Solent, making it even harder to get into position. Now the countdown's on, and the moment they've been planning for is upon them.
10, 9, just go put the spinnaker up now! 5, 4,
3, 2, 1.
So this was the start of the Volvo Ocean Race 2001. Prince Andrew fired the gun from the Galaxy cruise ship, sending the 8 yachts off on their journey around the globe. First across the line was Team SEB with Deduced Dragons hot on their tail. But only minutes into the race, disaster struck the girls' team. They ripped their spinnaker clean in half. A terrible start. Although the crew worked quickly to get the sail down and replace it with a new one, they'd lost valuable seconds, allowing the rest of the fleet to get away. A real disappointment for them so early in the race.
What happened?
no idea. It's the first time it's been up, so maybe something was wrong with it.
But as the rest of the fleet began to break away, the girls finally recovered their sail. Tycho took the left-hand side of the course and were in good shape, but SEB still had the lead, with Gunnar Krantz on the helm, carefully guiding his team through the mass of spectators. Grant Dalton on Amma Sports 1 overtook Deduced Dragons and then focused on catching the leaders. The rest of the fleet remained fairly bunched up, jostling for position, although Tycho, under the careful helm of Kevin Shoebridge, was making good progress.
That was good, but we got a bit locked in at the start, which was a pity. But we're up here, and that's what it's all about. We're actually ahead, but we're not unhappy with where we are, with the bunch. Okay, good breeze coming!
News Corp picked a central run out of the Solent, and although they were towards the back of the pack, careful concentration meant Jez Vanstone and his crew were not off the pace. Conditions were exceptionally tough as the Solent was completely churned up by the sheer amount of spectators. Thousands of people came to witness these state-of-the-art yachts beginning their epic journey. After just an hour of racing, Team SEB had a good lead, but Grant Dalton was not far behind.
It was all a bit of a frantic start, but you know, we've got quite nicely, I think. Looks all right so far. Yeah, we're getting on the wave. Illbruck's coming in through quite nice, but just settle now and see what happens.
AMA Sports 1 were clearly happy with their start as they reached the Hurst Narrows at the western end of the Solent. But then the second incident of the race occurred. Another spinnaker problem. This time it was aboard Assa Abloy, and the crew battled to get that huge yellow sail down below.
Only been an hour and a half on the Volvo race. Oh my God. 30,000 miles to go. God. Right. The other half. Time to put it back together.
Time for Richard Mason to get the sewing machine out. Whilst back on deck, the crew set another sail. Once again, vital seconds had been lost and there was no further margin for error. On board AMA Sports 1, Grant and his team go for a spinnaker change. Their idea is to hoist a new sail, set it, and then bring the old one down. Unfortunately, it didn't go according to plan. The old sail got stuck and wouldn't come down. Whilst the majority of the crew concentrated on trimming the new sail, bowman Jeff Brock was sent to the top of the rig to retrieve the old one. Not a great place to be in such bumpy conditions. Eventually the job was done, and Jeff returned to deck while the old sail was put away. Who'd have thought just getting out of the Solent would have been so eventful? The Needles are the final part of the Solent before the English Channel. At this stage, the majority of the spectator fleet left, finally allowing the crews to concentrate on the open water in front of them. As the last well-wishers waved goodbye and turned for home, the Volvo fleet ploughed on into the sunset and settled into their first night at sea. The tacticians and navigators must now consider their next moves and plan a good route. But with over 7,000 miles to go, it's a long way to Cape Town. Time-wise, this is the longest leg of the race. After leaving the Channel, the fleet will sail across the Bay of Biscay and south to the coast of North Africa, before crossing to the Brazilian side of the Atlantic. Here they have to round an island checkpoint. Then, having crossed the doldrums and the equator, they'll be trying to pick up some of the strong westerly winds, which will take them to the tip of Africa and their first stopover, Cape Town. To win this race, the boat has to go quickly and in the right direction. Pretty obvious. But someone has to decide which is the right direction in relation to the weather. Steve Hales is the navigator and meteorologist on board Tycho. He has to interpret the global information sent in from weather centres around the world.
The whole game cannot be decided by computers and by science. And the weather will always have an element of that to it. I think that weather forecasts are a lot more accurate than probably we give them credit for. But there are lots of times when things don't pan out, and that's why sometimes we make a decision. We never make deliberately bad decisions, and we try and position ourselves in the fleet to try and minimise the risk.
Each crew also needs to keep a close eye on exactly what the other boats are doing.
The last thing is to look at where the other boats are. Although we might feel very strongly that a certain part of the ocean is the right place to go to, we might adapt that plan because nobody else is going there. Anytime we split away from the fleet, we've got a big chance of gaining or, unfortunately, a big chance of losing. The boats don't all go in exactly the same way, and there's very short-term decisions that we make about how maybe one single cloud might affect us, through to much longer term. We have to pick a route from here all the way down to Cape Town, 7,500 miles away. So there are lots of options in there.
These yachts will encounter some of the worst weather conditions on the planet. In the Southern Ocean, low pressure creates high winds and big seas, with temperatures of 50 degrees below zero.
Well, it's just strong winds, big waves, and it's day after day in that type of condition. And on these boats, you never get a break. These boats are, as I said, quite wild and fun to sail. And in the strong winds, you know, it's day after day. And if you have a problem, the problem can turn into several other problems. And so, you know, it's difficult and it's tiring, physically demanding and tiring.
When we head down into the Southern Ocean, there's the way that the world is shaped. We're basically forced to sail as far south as we dare, and the reason for that is the further south we go, the shorter the distance that we sail. It's called great circle sailing. It's because the Earth is round. So we're always being forced to go down there because we don't want to sail any extra distance. So it would never be a situation where I can turn around and say, well, guys, you know, we're going to have a nice time and we'll sail the long distance, because we just know that that's going to be a losing option. So it's such a competitive race that people push each other harder and harder, and we tend to not have any option but to go what we feel is the best way for speed.
But for sailors, the worst weather is when there is no wind.
I think the first leg is always a tough one, because you have the whole race in front of you and everyone's anxious to see how they're going. We're going to cross the doldrums and the light air sort of areas where it's very hot. And for myself, being sort of born and raised in a country where it's pretty cold, I don't have a problem with freezing. I guess all Europeans have that background. So coming to the equator and the tropical zones where you have constant 40-45 degrees daytime, that's actually harder for me than being cold.
The doldrums are generally a very frustrating part of the race for us. It's an area very close, or generally on the equator. It's not quite the equator, but and what happens is the wind from the North Atlantic and the South Atlantic meet, and you end up with an area of generally very little wind. And what we're trying to do there is use clouds. There's a lot of very, very big towering thunder clouds, and when they start to rain, there's a lot of wind comes out of those. So we try and use that little bit of wind just to keep moving through the doldrums.
And if it all goes wrong, it's the navigator who gets the blame.
They always say on these boats that if the boat wins, it's well sailed by the crew, and if it loses, it's badly navigated. So I'm not sure that's strictly true, but somebody's going to get it right, somebody's going to get it wrong. Sometimes, we get it wrong.
Assessing the weather is a key aspect of sailing, but so is wearing the correct clothing for the prevailing conditions. For many race spectators, the most significant thing about the clothes the crews are wearing is the colour. For example, Deduced Dragons have become known as the boys in pink. But wearing the right clothes could mean the difference between life and death. Manufacturers are constantly striving to produce the best clothing possible for the extreme conditions the crews will be encountering.
It is just so cold. It is very damp cold. It's biting. It gets right into you. So we've got to make sure that we layer up from thermal layer, mid layer to the outer temperatures. Very, very cold, obviously. Icebergs, very strong winds.
All the yachts are required to carry a survival or abandonment suit for every crew member, just in case they go overboard. The problem is getting the sailors to wear them.
It's always a trade-off, and quite often, you sort of have to balance off how much you can move around the boat, because, as you say, mobility is very important as well. So even being on the boat and being slightly restricted in your movement, you can see that as being, slightly dangerous in some respects.
In the coldest of oceans, wearing that suit could delay death from cold and shock for 2 or 3 hours, but it does have to be wearable.
There's no good having the most durable, tough fabric if the person, when they wear it, is stiff as a board and they can't move around on deck. I think the advent of breathable fabrics have made an enormous difference. Because if you imagine before breathable fabrics that worked in the saltwater environment, you had a situation where an abandonment suit would close you up and nothing could get out. Nothing could get in, but also nothing could get out. So you're building up an awful lot of moisture.
Continuous development and testing have led to huge improvements in abandonment suits. Now the crews can work and sleep in them comfortably. Such improvements are made for every round-the-world race.
The first thing we do is test the fabric we want to use in the lab. It's got to go through the durability testing, it's got to go through the waterproofing testing, the breathability testing, to make sure that we've improved it sufficiently over the last one to spend the time doing the field testing on it. Having a waterproof fabric is a great start, but when we design a garment, we end up cutting that fabric and filling it full of needle holes. Every one of those cuts, every one of those needle holes has to be seam sealed with a seam tape. If you look at the demonstrations, you can see that a seam that has not been sealed up lets water through very quickly and the sailor gets wet. A seam that has been sealed up, when put on the suture tester and a great deal of pressure applied behind it, you can see that no water is getting through and your sailor's staying dry.
The clothing is then lab tested in conditions that are roughly the equivalent of a tropical rainstorm. One hour later, and it looks like the rough weather clothing has kept Nigel completely dry.
Yeah. Which that was a price. Lovely. Thank you very much.
Throughout development, the manufacturers work closely with the crews who will be wearing the clothing. Keeping the weight down is always a major consideration.
It is very demanding, but it's also very rewarding. We've been working with the guys on Illbruck for the last 3.5 years, and there have been many revisions. When we started out the very first set of kit with them, it had all kinds of extra features to keep them warm, extra features for safety like an E-Purd pocket, and they very much wanted to strip everything back to basics. So we were expecting to have extra features when in fact they wanted less features from the garments.
I mean, the gear that we use here is probably not what your average person is going to enjoy wearing out on the Solent on a cold winter's day, because we have sacrificed basically all the luxury features that we felt were not really necessary. An example would be on the jacket here. Most ocean jackets would have a nice hand-warming pocket underneath this front pocket with nice fleece, and we've got rid of that because one thing, the fleece gets wet, it's uncomfortable, and the other is it's just bulky and heavy, which at the end of the day makes the gear more uncomfortable to wear. Gill have been very flexible so that we can customise the gear for each individual person. An example of that is the pockets we have on the leg of the trousers. One of our guys is left-handed and he wanted his pocket on the left leg, so he's got it there. And the bowmen have to wear a harness, so the position of the pocket normally is not right for them, so their pocket has been moved to allow them to wear their harness comfortably as well.
So once again, the technology involved in this race is pushing the design boundaries to the limits. With the fleet now on their way, the race is on. And who knows what will happen as they move further from the sheltered coastal waters of the English Channel into the big seas of the Atlantic. As the fleet sails across the Bay of Biscay, the first serious incidents occur. The first few days of the race were typified by light winds, but then the forecast picked up, and as the winds grew, so did the risk of boat damage. The colourful Norwegians at the back of the fleet were the first to suffer. The Juice Dragons had broken their headboard car. Although it needed repairing, conditions were too rough, and skipper Knut Frostad was forced to slow down and lower the mainsail.
We had a really bad day yesterday. Sort of around lunchtime, this fitting came off the mast, which is the headboard car holding our mainsail up. So when this one falls down, or falls out the truck, we can't have the mainsail up anymore. So we had to take the mainsail down for quite a few hours and try to make a sort of very creative car that could hold the thing up. We hope it's going to last for at least some days from now. But obviously we can't push as hard as we wanted, so it slowed us down for the last 24 hours.
Finally, with their sails lashed to the mast, the Juice Dragons battled on, but they'd lost a lot of time and were now at the back of the fleet. A couple of days later, the same fate befell Team SEB under the practiced leadership of Gunnar Krantz. Gunnar, better known as Gurra, is one of the most experienced sailors in the race. He's Swedish and this is his third round-the-world race, his second as skipper, this time of Team SEB.
I think today the role of the skipper is more and more like a team leader. It's not necessarily that he has to be
The ferocious leader standing in the back whipping everybody to performance. We have a lot of skilled professional yachtsmen on board. They know their job, and it's more for a skipper to make sure that all the resources you need is at hands. All the stamina is in the group, that you have the right people in the group, and that you have the right direction of the group.
We can go about our work on a daily basis, on an hourly basis when we're sailing, without him having to be on top of us all the time, expecting answers every minute of the day. So in that respect, I think that's his biggest asset. I've sailed with other people who just want to stick their finger in every pie, and I don't believe that's the correct way of doing it.
Skippering a crew demands far more than just being a good racing sailor.
It's very important that you understand who you are yourself, to be able to cope with different people around you that you might not like 100% or you have different of opinion or whatever it is. So you have to understand why you are a group of people and why you are different and why you have different personalities and skills brought together in a very talented group of people with strong wills pulling in all sorts of directions. So if you can understand that you have to give people space, the same space as you need yourself to develop yourself and do whatever you have to do, then you have a good dynamic. You understand why we are different. You understand why people sometimes irritates you. But you can live with it because it's not bad. It's strengthening the group because you have different people good at different things, and that's what you need.
The early stages of the first leg have already given Gunnar and his team a major headache. A broken headboard car meant that they couldn't keep their mainsail up and put them into last position on day 8. 21-year-old Scott Beavis was sent up the mast to solve the problem. It was no easy task, and bouncing around in the rigging whilst the boat was pitching violently caused Scott some minor facial injuries.
I went up the mast to reattach the headboard to the mast because we ripped it off last night, and finished the job off on the way down. Thought I'd try and tackle the mast halfway down. Unfortunately, I came off second best.
It's always bad for morale in the team to come in last. Depends on why, of course, but if you look for explanations to come last, you normally end up last. So you have to focus on what you have to do to be on top of the fleet. Should something occur, a breakdown whatsoever, you have to live with it. You have to deal with it within the team and make sure you understand how to come back, not to sit there and suffer. You have to understand and have a plan for how you come back.
It's such resilience and determination that has earned Gunnar the respect of his crew.
He's good at getting the most out of people. He's a good driver, you know, making sure that we all are feeling enthusiastic, and when the going gets tough, he's good at pushing everybody.
In this race, you learn a lot about how strong the nature is, how strong bonds you get between people, and you learn a lot more than just the racing itself. I don't know if it makes me a stronger kind of person, but I think it makes me a different kind of person. I see a lot more of limits in human beings. I see a lot more of limits within myself. I learn a lot more than what I believe a normal person do about themselves. So I think it's to some extent an education in life and human beings.
What's our altitude, Debbie?
We're currently 350 feet.
Rick Tomlinson spends much of his working life hanging out of helicopters. He's the official photographer for the Volvo Ocean Race, but it's a job he got into by default.
I got into it because I had a burning ambition when I was at school, that was in the Isle of Man, to do the Whitbread round the world race. And I did everything that I could in sailing to travel transatlantic and to get involved with some of the racing. And eventually I ended up doing boat building on a project which became Drum and Simon Le Bon's Whitbread round the world race in 1985. And somebody within the team said, oh, because we have Simon Le Bon on board, we better have somebody taking some photographs. And I think I was the sort of last person to say no. The camera was put into my hand.
The photos he took during that race made Rick's name as a yachting photographer. But this is the first year that he hasn't combined sailing and photography.
But Rick, I think the best time we had was on Drum.
Yeah, I think so too,
Yeah.
Then there wasn't the same pressure, was there?
No, I remember when you and me, we packed the storm chutes.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it took 5 hours or something. We had a fantastic time. Rick, it's good to have you here, but it's sad that you're not on boat.
Thanks, Mag. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you.
If there is any edge at all, it's a matter of understanding the sport. You have to understand what boats do and why they do it. And I think a lot of the time, particularly in racing at the Admiral's Cup type of level, I can anticipate a lot of what's going to happen. If you see the helmsman and the tactician talking and looking over their shoulder, or you see 2 or 3 people move off the rail, you know they're going to tack or jibe, whereas somebody perhaps coming down cold from Fleet Street, they're always sort of 2 steps behind me. I get to know the sailors pretty well. Many of them I've sailed with on drum or intrum or EF, and it's the same people coming back time and time again that do this race.
This is also the first year that Rick's wife Annika and their 2-year-old son will be travelling to ports all around the world with him. They'll be spending most of the 9-month race away from home.
It's not particularly difficult, but I think it's actually easier now because we're mainly going to warm places. So hopefully we won't be needing as many warm clothes. And James, all his stuff, it's so small, so it doesn't take up much room really. Usually we pack things and then he tries to unpack them. He's mainly keen on the soft toys, and sometimes he gets very upset when they try to put them in the X-ray machine if they're part of the hand luggage.
The whole family is going on tour. It's quite a different type of assignment in that respect. We're quite a big team. We even have to have our own team meetings at home to discuss how we're going to tackle jobs and what we're going to take with us.
Rick is no stranger to exotic locations and risky assignments.
The vehicles and the platforms that we use for taking pictures, I don't think it's risky. You know, you fly in helicopters and you lean out of the door, but you sit in chase boats and things, but I think it's far riskier probably going to work in London every day, travelling on the tube or on the buses.
His first job for this year's race is to get the definitive start picture. He's decided to shoot from a helicopter without a door, but he's still insisting it's not dangerous.
Why do you need to be strapped in then?
Strapped in just in case I fall out. I mean, that shouldn't happen, of course, and it never has to me. But if there is a situation where the pilot has to make a sudden manoeuvre to avoid another helicopter or something, then, and I'm not aware, then I could fall out of the door. So I have a harness on with a clip and I'm fastened on to the helicopter just in case. But it should never come to that.
Golf Zulu Alpha, we'd like to go down to 200 feet now. Zulu Alpha, sorry, say again. 2-minute route for the gun is just about to go off. There goes the gun. Okay, there's the gun, that's the start. 4-minute gun, that was the
5 minutes. Rick shoots with both film and digital cameras. His assistant Jessica will send the digital shots by email directly into race headquarters. From there they go onto a web system and will be available to newspaper and magazine editors for publication the next day. Picture manager Patrick Anderson has assembled the website.
It means for the first time probably in ocean racing, people have the choice of which pictures they use. Whereas in the past they probably have been issued with half a dozen pictures or 6 or 7. Everybody gets the same images.
Is this sort of level?
Perfect.
Right?
Absolutely perfect.
Okay.
Yep.
And you've got 15
Come a little faster.
Sorry, say again, Rick?
A little faster.
It can clearly be seen how many other facets there are to this most established of ocean races. Indeed, as soon as the yachts are on their way, another race begins. The shore crew need to pack away every piece of steel and canvas, every floorboard and nameplate, all the bits and pieces that will be needed at the next port of call.
What we're seeing here now is the breakdown of our entire race village and the packing up of containers which will do a leapfrog operation around the world to all the stopover destinations.
There are 2 sets of everything, so that whilst this set heads off to Sydney, another set is already on its way to Cape Town to be ready and waiting for the cruise.
It is a big operation. It's something like 750 container movements worldwide, and we also have an air freight component which has something like 300 container movements worldwide.
It's a huge logistical operation, and any ship delays would give Chris and his team a massive problem. Unfortunately, it looks like there may well be a problem, as back on the water the fleet are experiencing unusually light winds.
Sunshine in a bag, I'm useless, but not for long. The future is coming on.
See, we have very little wind, and we're making pretty slow progress here at the moment.
If it was early doldrums, that would maybe be okay, but doldrums is still to come.
Normally there's about 25 knots of trade winds and magnificent sailing. But for us the last few days have been days of basically nothing, and this morning absolutely nothing. I've never seen it like this at all. What this does is, first of all, change the prospects of the leg to be a very, very long leg.
Now, because of the speed we're travelling at the moment, we're starting to ration food today. That's our next little problem. So we're trying to figure out how we can get about 4 days more food out of what we've got at present.
The girls' team under Lisa MacDonald are also amongst those suffering. But the problem isn't affecting the whole fleet. After a good night's run, Asa Abloy aren't doing too badly. In fact, they're doing rather well, as Lisa's husband Neil explains.
Well, we had a pretty good night, thank you, Sydney. Thanks to your helming and your watch doing very well. And, I think we're now in bronze medal spot after battling through the night. I think we're a little further west than the rest of the guys, so we had a nicer breeze. And we're looking all right. We think that's Tycho up here in the distance, 6 miles away. And Illbruck's probably down here somewhere, still ahead. We're going reasonably well.
What about your wife?
Who cares? Back there, where she belongs.
Another married couple involved in the race are now much further apart. Michelle and Jerry got married just weeks before the race began and won't be seeing each other again until the fleet arrive in Cape Town.
I give you this ring as a sign of our marriage.
I give you this ring as a sign of our marriage.
With my body, I honour you.
With my body, I honour you.
All that I am, I give to you. And all that I have, I share with you. Within the love of God, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. I therefore proclaim that they are husband and wife. Those whom God has joined together, that no one can asunder.
It's amazing. The day's just going very quickly, and as everyone said, just try and soak it up, but it is going quickly. It's lovely to see. I couldn't believe it in the church when I saw everyone and people I hadn't seen for such a long time. It's really very nice.
It can't have been an easy decision to get married on the eve of the race.
No, I mean, we've been together for nearly 4 years now, and that time just felt right. If it had been too difficult, we would have waited, but it's all fitted in really well.
It's been lovely to come here and do something with sort of help Jerry a little bit in his day, and we've had a great day here. But yeah, I guess there's a little bit of talk now. The ceremony's out the way, and I didn't forget the rings or anything too important. I guess at some stage we need to return our thoughts back to the race.
So, with the boats closing on the equator, there have already been plenty of incidents. It's been an untypical leg so far, with uncharacteristic light winds. As a result, it's not all been hard work.
To most normal people, you would call this a brush for cleaning dishes. Certainly to most people on this boat, it's a brush for cleaning dishes. In fact, the only one we've got. Unfortunately, Becking thought this was actually a toilet brush. The big problem with that was he didn't tell us that he'd used it as a toilet brush until just a day or so ago after we'd been redoing the dishes with it. Beautiful.
I'm not too sure if how this is going to go in a couple of days.
You've got to eat that coal, apparently.
I don't think we're going near a toilet for a few days after this. Even me.
Beautiful.
Lights on, lights off. It's hot. It's hard work. I'm glad I'm not a girl. Oops, I shouldn't have said that.
Beautiful.
Even in the face of adversity, morale on board seems high.
Took a bit of a tumble at breakfast today, just trying to get the old porridge in the bowl. Lost it, fell straight across the galley, and took the kettle with me, which had just been boiled. Now got a nice first-degree burn on my arse cheek where the kettle managed to pour its contents over me.
Gives a look, gives a look. Oh, look at that!
Beautiful.
This is the route the boats have taken since leaving Southampton. Days into the race, the boat positions are settling down. Now 130 miles off the coast of Brazil, Illbruck are maintaining and slowly increasing their lead over the rest of the fleet. They were the first of the yachts to reach the second turning mark of the leg. DTL means the distance to the race leader, currently Illbruck, and DTF is the distance in miles to the finish of the leg. So John Kostecki and Illbruck are still setting the pace, always the team to watch. It seems their 4-year-long campaign is paying off. Second-placed Roy Heiner on Assa Abloy is maintaining the pressure on the leaders and is now only 26 miles behind. Damaged equipment, specifically broken headboard cars, have meant that both SEB and Deduced Dragons have failed to maintain maximum speed, as they've been unable to use their main sail to its full potential. The girls' team, Amma Sports 2, have had a bad leg as well. Their satellite equipment was damaged early on, and this meant they couldn't access vital weather information sites from the internet. Clearly a major problem when trying to navigate through the doldrums. There are clearly 2 packs in the race at the moment, as the last 3 boats are over 300 miles behind Illbruck. But a lot could still happen over the next 3,000 miles. There's the traditional King Neptune ceremony, historically always a messy event when the ruler of the seas, Neptune himself, comes aboard and tries the crews for their crimes as they cross the equator. Punishment usually involves having the last few days of food slops poured on them. Ridiculous. But if the Volvo fleet are at rationing point, who knows what their fate will be. There are also the trade winds, an opportunity for fast sailing which could considerably shake the leaderboard up. All this will influence who arrives first in Cape Town. Set amid spectacular mountains and magnificent beaches, cosmopolitan Cape Town is truly amongst the world's most beautiful cities. When the fleet arrive here towards the end of October, it will be a welcome haven after a grueling 5 weeks at sea. Like all circumnavigators before them, they will see the awesome might of Table Mountain and the beauty of the first of the two great capes, the Cape of Good Hope. The fleet will be moored at the Victoria and Alfred waterfront, where visitors will get the chance to explore the Volvo Ocean Race village and look over the boats. While here, the crews will have the chance to take in the many colourful sights and explore the region, from its world-renowned botanical gardens to its historic vineyards and exotic wildlife. After a good period of rest and relaxation, they will have reviewed their first leg performances and can then plan ahead for their next arduous challenge, the first of the Southern Ocean legs. Here they'll encounter freezing temperatures, icebergs, terrifying seas, and some of the most treacherous sailing conditions in the world. But that's all in the future. First, the boats need to get there. Join us in the next programme to see the fleet arriving in South Africa and to find out who wins the first leg of the 2001 Volvo Ocean Race.